Chapter 19. The sun was still out, making the forest well lit and bright. Yet Derek is certain that a lot of time has passed being there for Splinter. He's still not sure why Splinter didn't want anyone else but him to see the Black Redrak's emotions. But if Splinter really did feel uncomfortable, Derek won't judge him. They were lying on the ground, relaxing. Splinter had finally let out what he bottled up for so long. Although his breathing was still shaky from time to time, he's definitely back to being calm now. "I still don't understand," Splinter finally said, looking towards Derek. "How are you alive? How did you even get here?" "I'll give you the summary," Derek replied. "Some Bardrak woman was looking for Jesse. I'm assuming a promal, like I was, but instead of him, she pulled me here, gave me, well, this body. Apparently she was so obsessed with getting him back that as soon as she realized I was a different person, she just lost all interest and told me to fuck off." "So then, what actually happened to you?" Splinter questioned, now on his side facing him. "Did you actually die? Or were you just put somewhere else?" Derek shrugged with a heavy sigh. "I'll be honest, man, I got no idea. All I know was that when I fell, I watched my body, I don't know, melt before my eyes. And then there was just this black void. Couldn't see, couldn't hear, like I lost all of my senses. I'm thinking I really did die." Splinter immediately reached out and started to feel Derek, a hand on his chest, fingers pressing against major blood vessels, all to check if he had life. Derek was surprised at the sudden action, but he caught on to the intent and didn't resist. "No, you're alive, fully," Splinter muttered, eyes showing his mind at work. "You can't be undead. Could this caster have figured out how to fully resurrect someone?" "I'm guessing that's a major accomplishment," Derek asked with a shrug. "Yes, absolutely." Splinter nodded, pulling away now that he's convinced there's no further need to check. The magic of reanimating bodies or bringing souls under your service is no easy thing. With other forms of magic, you're simply, I'll put it this way, you're just manipulating a natural force, much like you would burn wood to heat yourself or cook food. Raising the dead is something entirely different. It's more like trying to tame an animal who has no interest in you. "Shit. Guess that Bardrak means business then," Derek commented, relieved that he got smart quickly enough to not piss off the witch. He then snapped to Splinter upon realizing, "Hey, unless she moved on, that same Bardrak who brought me here should still be around. She's been attacking several towns and such, killing people and kidnapping others. I have a feeling Scarface would take care of it himself, but, well, let's just say, unless you're watching over me, nothing will make him move. I have been hearing talk of a string of brutal murders for some time now within this area." Splinter nodded, immediately recalling. "All right, I'll go talk to Scarface, work out a plan with him. Mostly to figure out how to make sure you aren't alone for a second. Look, I really appreciate that you want me safe so much." Derek sighed, feeling torn about how he feels towards this. "But, I don't know. I just don't think it's a good idea to kind of build a dependence on you guys. Know what I mean? What happens if I get separated from you?" "You won't," Splinter responded in a matter-of-fact tone. "Assuming it does happen," Derek insisted. "You won't," Splinter countered firmly. "I know Scarface has said this before, but let me emphasize, seeing you die on that bridge, living over 1,000 years without you, it was torture, like a gaping wound that never healed. I know Scarface, I know Albert, I even know myself. It nearly killed us when you fell off that bridge. If we see you die a second time, we will join you. I'm sorry, but that's the absolute truth. You'll never truly understand just..." Splinter trailed off with a sigh, then looked back at Derek. "You'll just never understand what those long years were like for us. For me." Whether it was because he saw that Splinter wasn't going to back down, or he gave into his fear of being by himself again, Derek chose to concede. There just wouldn't be any point in arguing. He's starting to think that it's just one of those things where the only cure is time and patience. "All right, I won't argue." Derek sighed, slowly sitting up. After a while, he turned to Splinter with a grin. "So Scarface tells me you're an amazing sneak, yeah?" Splinter responded with a grin of his own, nodding. Nobody, not even my own men and the others, knows where I am. You'd be surprised at how powerful information is, as well as the lack of such. But that's the more ... mon piece of what they do know. All right, what else can you do? Derek asked, fully facing him. Splinter looked around before he answered. Just like my whereabouts, my, shall we say, magic is also completely unknown. You'll be the only person who knows. Let's see it then, Derek encouraged with a wide smile. Splinter grinned in response, then crawled behind Derek, getting into his shadow. And right before his eyes, Derek's own shadow grew outward, losing his silhouette as it changed into a literal void that grew and grew before rapidly. After some time, Splinter let out a little laugh as he practically fell into the shadow, a pair of red eyes, all that reveals where he was. And just as quickly, Splinter hopped out back into the real world, the void rapidly shrinking back into Derek's silhouette. Holy shit, Derek exclaimed, staring at his shadow. That's fucking amazing, dude! With a little laugh, Splinter moved to sit beside Derek. Well, this is Albert's theory, so you'll have to talk to him, but he thinks that the ether has affected us somehow, infused our beings with so much magic that we can perform pretty powerful things without effort. Wait, really? Oh, Derek asked with some disbelief. So, then the other guys have something too? Scarface and Albert? Hell, even me? Splinter nodded, though he seemed a bit hesitant. Scarface is shall I say, a double-edged gladius. His magic is more straightforward, passive. He's extremely resilient and powerful, can withstand incredible injury, but can inflict twice that. But his loose temper we all know and love, that's also been affected. But, well, just trust me when I say this. If he loses it, you're better off letting it run its course. Derek nodded in understanding, already trying to guess at how bad it is. All right, and what about Albert? Based on what I've heard, he's extremely smart. Splinter chuckled and then nodded again. Oh yeah, the moment he enrolled in the Imperial Academy, he was already considered the brightest pupil in its history. 2 years in, and he already was a major contributor to many different research projects. It's still amazing, honestly. I remember this one time Splinter trailed off, starting to sound reluctant. What? Derek asked with a shrug, now getting interested. Come on, don't leave me hanging here. What did he do? Splinter fidgeted in place, but then sighed. Considering what you've been through, there's no point in hiding it. Derek, I'm not just a spy, poking around and getting information. I'm also an assassin. Whenever the Empire needed someone dead, whether quietly or by an accident, they sent me or my men. Do you have a problem with that, Derek? Derek took a moment to think it over. He doesn't honestly see any problem with it. Splinter, as well as the others, have absolutely zero reason to see him dead. If anything, they'll fight as hard as they can to keep him safe. That much is clear. And the more he thought about it, the safer he actually feels. It's already good that he has a badass commander and knight with him, now an assassin who can move and hide in shadows. No, I don't, Derek answered simply with an encouraging smile. No matter who or what you are, as long as you're the Splinter I remember, I will always accept you, okay? Splinter let himself give a grateful smile. All right, so what I was about to say, there was this target over in the Demel lands that needed to be dead since he was gathering a rather powerful force of warriors, right? Problem is, he's never alone. He was always around others, never alone for a second. Even though I shouldn't have, I talked to Albert on it, hoping his beautiful mind could think of something. Well, about a couple of days later, he gives me a dagger mounted on my arm. Now get this, with a simple tug of a string. The dagger is launched outward at lethal speed. When I made the kill, every Demel there was absolutely convinced that the warlord's son was the culprit and had him hanged. Probably helped that I angled the blade to look like a backstab. As soon as Splinter finished, Derek couldn't help but share a thought he had. If you could hide in shadows, why not wait until, say, bedtime when everyone is asleep? Like I said, he's never alone. Splinter replied with a shrug, And not only that, but I felt that if they knew it was an assassination, that'll make future jobs difficult. I wanted to do it in a way that misdirects them. Okay, I see. Derek nodded in thought. Did you want to frame someone from the start, or was it just circumstance? Could you not have easily made an accident instead? Splinter shrugged as he looked aside, an expression indicating some playfulness. I could, but as soon as Albert gave me that self-launching blade, as well as discovering some tension between the warlord and his son, I just couldn't resist. All right, fair enough. Derek responded, not having anything more to say. After looking out beyond the trees, he then said, I'm assuming you already know this, but I'm going to need help getting back to camp. I don't, actually, Splinter replied with a little surprise. I'll confess I was rather specific about what I wanted to know at first. In fact, now that I'm, well, more appropriate in behavior now, I must ask, why was Scarface carrying you? Were your feet hurting again and you didn't say anything? Really? Derek asked in a deadpan voice. Over 1,000 years without me, and that's what you actually remember back in the ether, right? Yep. Splinter nodded with a grin. Still remember how hilarious it was with you throwing that fit? Just, Derek gave out a defeated groan. All right, here's what happened. I encountered a wood elf, a wammel. When I wasn't looking, he stabbed me with something and gave me an iron bone with it. He was about to haul me off for skinning when the local Tybin and his people found me in time. God, I can still fucking feel it even now. And then not even a week later, that giant orc, Ormal horde came along. Their boss found me, stabbed me good in the gut here, but Scarface found me in time and got me to a doctor. Now, I'm pretty super weak for a while, but I'll be fine. Splinter stood there motionless as he listened, and continued to remain still when Derek was finished. He couldn't read anything off of the black reed rack, and when he remembered, Derek couldn't even smell emotions off of him. So you're saying immediately after coming to this world, you almost died? Twice? Splinter questioned calmly after some time, and all in spite of Scarface being around? Not the first one. He wasn't there yet, Derek corrected, feeling a bit uneasy by some subtle change in Splinter's aura. And the Ormal guys came in pretty fast. Scarface just did what he needed to do. He had an army to lead and a village to defend. I don't blame him for what happened. Even though I never enlisted myself, I always knew war, or just combat, would be an absolute shit show. Fuck, I'm just grateful I got out alive. Splinter nodded slowly. I see. Well, now you have me to keep an eye on you. Ideally, I'll kill them before you even realize they're moving to sink blades in you. Scarface will be your last line of defense. Derek gave an appreciative smile. Thanks, man, but you don't need to worry. Scarface feels as though he fucked up really bad. I'm kind of worried he'll end up starting shit with his men because of him making me the top priority. Point is, dude's sticking to me like super glue. Well, when you're not around, that is... Splinter just looked at him, his body motionless. But I will be around. Give Scarface a gladius and he can either be an impassable iron wall or an unstoppable machine of war. But he's just one man. I hope you realize that, especially after what happened with the Ormal. By devoting my time to making sure you're safe, what happened with the Ormal won't be repeated ever, Derek wanted to argue. He wanted to assure him that Scarface will be more than enough to keep him safe. But deep down, he quickly succumbed to the most base desire that he's had for a very long time. Splinter is willing to devote his time just to protect Derek, whether it's because of him and the others growing up as pets, or just the simple fact that they truly do love him, despite starting out as unintelligent animals. And Derek is already hooked to that high it gives him, the feeling of being loved, that he's a priority. All right, fine, Derek said with a sigh. But please don't start shit with Scarface, okay? He tried his best, and I don't put any fault on him personally. He did the best he could with what he had and what he went up against. Splinter nodded, his form relaxing some. I wasn't going to fight Scarface. While admittedly I feel he could have done far better, what's important is that you're alive and well. Now then, I may not be as strong as Scarface, but that doesn't mean I'm weak either. Here. Oh, that's okay, man, Derek said with his hands raised. Just let me lean on you and I'll be fine. Derek, don't, Splinter sighed. You said it yourself. You survived the Nyesra, the Wamel poison, and being gutted by an Ormel. Your body is in desperate need of peace. Quit making it worse by refusing help. All right, fine. Derek gave a little groan, accepting the point. With a final nod, Splinter approached him and then scooped the gray Redrak into his arms. With a little grunt of effort, Splinter secured his grip and then proceeded to make for the Legion camp back in the village. By the time they returned to where the Legion was camping, Splinter was close to heaving, and he continued to refuse Derek's offer of trying to walk mostly by his own strength. Scarface gave a little chuckle as soon as he spotted them and approached. Had a little trouble? Underestimated the distance? Yes. Splinter huffed as he gently allowed Derek onto his feet. Other than that, we're here. So Derek tells me there's a witch stalking the area? Scarface nodded, gently placing his hand on Derek's opposite arm. No idea where at presently. All we know is that it's a Bardrak woman, possibly the same one that Derek saw. Splinter nodded. And you won't search for her because that would mean letting Derek out of your sight, yes? Scarface gave a little glare. Let me guess, Derek explained what happened. Why I was carrying him. Yes, he did. Splinter nodded again. But I won't touch on that point. The witch is terrorizing innocent men and women. She must be dealt with immediately. I can watch over Derek while you take care of her. Or, more sensibly, you can take care of her while I keep an eye on Derek. Scarface responded with a scowl. He and I are the only ones who know you're here. You have the element of surprise, especially if you go during the night. You'll have a much better chance at stopping her versus me with my loud, clanking armor, bashing through trees and bushes. That is true, yes, Splinter assented. But you fought Ormel shamans many times. You're no stranger in dealing with mages. Scarface glared more strongly at Splinter. You don't trust me in keeping Derek safe, right? Told you about what happened to him, yeah? Scarface, I have no desire in fighting with you about that. Splinter sighed irritably. I just believe that, with your experience, you can shrug off any magic that witch can throw at you. You'll essentially render spells irrelevant, and you won't need to deal with magic, period, Scarface continued. What? You telling me you don't think you can get the first arrow on the witch? Perhaps you've lost your edge. Guys, Derek interrupted, knowing where this is going. Jesus, I'm grateful you guys want to watch over me so much. Thank you, but this is getting a bit much, don't you think? Why am I the holdup over stopping the witch? Okay. How about this then? Splinter, get out there and find the witch. When you do, see what you can learn. What's she doing? Why is she doing this? How powerful is she? Once you got everything, pass it on to Scarface, who will then make a plan and stop or kill that witch. Sound good? Splinter nodded after a moment. Yes, that'll work for both of us. I hope. Scarface didn't seem pleased. Splinter can handle both of that. Why are you two trying to push me out? That's not what we're doing. Derek responded in surprised confusion. That witch is killing good people, and it was looking like you two weren't agreeing on a plan, so I decided to offer up my 2 cents here. No, Splinter thinks that I'm completely incapable of stopping anyone trying to kill you. Scarface scowled fiercely. And it sounds like you're thinking that too. I'm not what you think I am. My head wasn't in the right place, but now it is. Nobody and nothing is getting past me. Nothing. Scarface, that's not what this is about at all, Splinter said reassuringly. I'm still confident in your ability. I'll confess to this, even though we talk back in the woods. I still want to spend more time with him. You're not the only one who suffered the past 1,000 years, Scarface. Scarface bristled at that. Well, why didn't you just say so then? Why'd you have to go and make me think you Rikis didn't believe in me anymore, eh? That wasn't the intention, Splinter responded, caught off guard. I apologize if that's what happened. I promise you, you're not any lesser in my eyes. Damn right I'm not, Scarface huffed. All right, in that case, we're going with Derek's plan. Track down that witch, learn everything you can, and then relay it back to me. I'll figure it out from there, Kay. Understood. Splinter grinned as he nodded. I'll have the Shadowrunners fan out and search through this entire region. We'll have some word by nightfall. Derek did a double take as he started staring at Splinter. Wait, Shadowrunners? Are those your men? From where I was, it sounded like you were going to look for the witch on your own. Why didn't you just say you were going to send out men? Oh, I suppose that wasn't clear. Splinter stammered for a moment before scratching the back of his neck. Scarface glared furiously. Did we just argue for nothing, Ricky? Splinter just gave a little shrug accompanied by an embarrassed smile. Moseo, Swibia. Elsabeth was humming a tune to herself as she was preparing some garlic bread. The dough had been set and rested. Now she just needs to shred some Moseon cheese on top of it, sprinkle the garlic and herbs upon it, finish it with a drizzle of butter, and then bake it. Her comfort food. Your Majesty. Her attendant, a brown redrak named Sablius, spoke as he entered the kitchen. King Artyr has returned. He's on his way to speak with you at this moment. Elsabeth let out a joyful smile. Thank you, Sablius, as you were. With a bow, he left the kitchen. Elsabeth just placed the bread into the oven when her loving husband walked in with a fast stride, immediately taking her into his arms and engaging in a long kiss. As much as she enjoyed the gesture, she already sensed that it was not entirely romantic in motivation. Elsabeth held the kiss for a few moments more before gently opening up space between them, holding his gaze. Artyr, you spoke with the order, correct? Is something wrong? Artyr broke the gaze, letting out an anxious huff before leaning against a wall. Yes, what I have heard was not pleasant. Let me hear it then, Artyr. Elsabeth nodded, taking a spot next to him while resting a hand on his shoulder. He took in a breath to prepare, then began. There is a very high chance that Swibia is on the path to war, but not just any war. You know the Redrax? It would seem that their old empire is returning. Not even the Order knows who's instigating it, but whoever they are, they're intelligent. They've already placed agents within the kingdom with the purpose of weakening us, damaging our resolve. It is but a step in their path to resurrection, of reclaiming their lost glory. Although her face remained stoic, Elsabeth's body tensed as she listened. After a moment, her gaze drifted to the floor as she thought. Some nods signaled her escape from thinking. Have they said anything about their return being a certainty? They believe so. Yes, Artyr nodded, and it wouldn't make sense for a loose rabble of Redrak peasants to suddenly attack us in number. No, someone is intent on bringing back their empire, and when it returns I am absolutely convinced that they will endeavor to make it last. Then that would mean the Drakfolk will become emboldened, yes? Elsabeth questioned, a dark thought entering her mind. For a very long time, none of them have ever possessed their own kingdom, merely tribes and loose warlords. If the Redraks bring back their empire and defend themselves, that will encourage the other Draks, inspire them to make attempts at creating their own states. And that's only speaking for those who live beyond our land. Artyr looked over to Elsabeth. The attendants will start to challenge us. That's where you're leading to, correct? Elsabeth nodded, then sighed. Perhaps, not including the idea of war. Perhaps it would be for the best. I don't know about you, Artyr, but I'm just exhausted, tired of perpetuating this lie, this facade, all to keep the highborn content. Artyr looked towards the door, then back to his wife. Sablius? She nodded. The poor man has endured so much when he traveled with me, and all because of this image I feel required to uphold. I couldn't speak for him. I had to stay silent, or in the worst of times, take part in his suffering. Artyr took in a long breath, as well as a long exhale. I understand how you feel. I, too, am imprisoned, but not by the highborn. Elsabeth glanced over to him. The Amo? He gave a dark nod. This can all be traced back to their beliefs. When the Mel folk discovered our origins, while we were trying to understand what it meant, the Emil shot forward ahead of us, and their answer was that we are the chosen ones. All of us are extensions of one single great race. Anyone who is not Mel are to never be considered a man or a woman, but mere invaders and interlopers. So why all this cruelty then? The barbaric acts, Elsabeth questioned with a sigh. What's the point or the purpose of all of it? I fear that the sustained torture and suffering is uniquely a Hamel decision, Artir said. You've heard what the others are doing, right? The Amel purchase hunted dracs from the Wamel and skin them for their furs. The Damel sometimes purchases them too for their extensive mining, but mostly tries to find new workers themselves. The Gumel, nobody knows what they do. They rarely talk to others, and the Samel has begun making ice sculptures around the dracs they get their hands on. Elsabeth seemed to be shaken at this. She was aware of it all, but being reminded of it made no difference. When she looked back to his face, she saw another familiar expression. The face of a man at work planning out his strategy. What are you planning, dear? Artir looked to her. Swabia, in any possible case, must be united. Whether it is us or them who starts war, a fractured nation cannot ever hope to defend itself. And the only way to ensure that is to begin extending protections and rights towards the dracs, just as the Unterkaisers advocated for. Elsabeth took in a breath as she nodded. You realize that will put you in a political war against the Highborn, correct? They won't allow this without a fight. Artir's expression darkened. For too long, we have allowed ourselves to cower before our own subjects, simply because they were higher in society. You and I, we are the rulers of Swabia, not they. They will bow before us in the name of protecting our kingdom. Elsabeth nodded once more, then took Artir's arm. Whatever happens, I am with you. As queen and wife, all I ask is that you ensure that I get to see you again. Artir chuckled as he rested his hand on hers. Then, clearly, you still don't know me, love. I'll only die when I decide that my work is done. Elsabeth chuckled back and then gave a quick peck onto his cheek. Go and speak then, love. As for me, I have something I feel I need to do. With an understanding nod from Artir, they both gave each other a warm embrace before parting ways. Artir to the Swabian court, Elsabeth towards her attendant, Savlius. As expected, she found him in the servants' quarters. While not as lavish and opulent as their own, the servants of the royal family are taken care of rather handsomely, at least as far as Elsabeth is aware of. They all immediately stood to attention when her presence was noticed. After a moment, Elsabeth found him. Savlius, if it's not a bother, would you accompany me? Oh, of course, your highness. Savlius nodded, caught off guard by her sudden appearance. It quote, ... it quote, s, no bother at all. With a grateful smile, she offered her hand to him. Savlius stared at it, his expression of shock deepening at the gesture. The rest of the drac servants stared in tense anticipation, desperately trying to deduce the hidden language behind the queen's actions. With encouragement from her, Savlius, with a shaky hand, grasped hers and began to walk with her. Forgive my rudeness, your majesty, Savlius began, having great difficulty calming himself. I don't understand. Elsabeth let out a long sigh as they stopped in front of a view of the royal garden. Savlius, I came here because I need to apologize to you for how I've treated you since you've entered my service. You've done nothing wrong, sire, Savlius protested meekly. Nothing you have done warrants any apology. Everything and anything is my fault for potentially damaging your honor. Savlius, be honest, Elsabeth said in a soft yet commanding tone as she looked to him. Ever since you became my attendant, how would you describe your life under me? Savlius stammered for some time, struggling to reconcile his training and her command. Finally, after giving up his debate, his form slacked somewhat, and his tone was ... dejected. I hate it, milady. At first I was angry that you wouldn't do anything for me. The queen refusing to discipline those beneath her. But over time, I accepted my fate. This is how it is. As long as I'm your property, none of the other highborn would dare do anything to me. I just had to accept that the royal family was no different. Just more relaxed. Elsabeth's lips tensed as she held herself back. This was the thing she dreaded, witnessing the results of her inaction and cowardice, revealing the true pain behind a flimsy mask of the good servant. Savlius, I brought you here because I'm sorry, you deserve better, far better. You yourself are a person in your own right, and should not be subject to such humiliation. Savlius's eyes seemed to have given a spark when he looked. What? Elsabeth looked around before leaning towards him. Arder, and by extension myself, have just been informed of this. The Redrax, your people, are reuniting. The old empire is coming back. I don't know if it's tomorrow, next week, or anything, but we're convinced that it's a certainty. Savlius returned a slack-jawed shock upon hearing this, completely silent. Without letting him respond, Elsabeth continued. I have failed you as a master. I've allowed others to mistreat you and to manipulate me in taking part in your humiliation. I do not expect forgiveness, not with what I've done and haven't done. I just hope you can see the regret and remorse, both within my voice as well as my gesture. If you wish, I can arrange for you to be taken beyond Athel's shield, into the Redrac corridor. Be with your people once more. Savlius stood in silence, having difficulty processing what he has heard. What was happening? He still didn't know if this was yet another elaborate intrigue, born of ultimate boredom, or something genuine. But if the old empire truly was returning, you mean it? Savlius squeaked out, giving in to his hope. Elsabeth gave a reassuring, smiling nod. Absolutely. Because of what we have learned, Swabia is going to change. I cannot tell with any degree of certainty whether it'll mean good or worse once it is done. Should you take my offer, you'll escape what could possibly be the end of a kingdom, yet be part of a great rebirth. Contribute even, but only if you accept of your own volition. Whatever choice you make, I will accept it without hesitation. After a very long time, Savlius smiled, felt joy and hope, the emotion overwhelming him to where his eyes began to tear up. In one short day, a lifetime enduring the depraved abuse and callous intrigue by the Hamel Highborn, now rapidly giving way to a bright future, where his people will return to prominence and work towards a prosperous tomorrow. Savlius doesn't remember the last time his smile was genuine and not forced. Sensing his decision, Elsabeth gave a smile of her own and opened her arms. Savlius, enslaved if only a moment more to his training and discipline, hesitated. After an encouraging nod from the queen, Savlius broke free and embraced her. A Hamel who once looked aside from his abuse and took part if her reputation was threatened, had just removed her mask and revealed who she truly was. I don't know if I'll get the chance, Your Highness, Savlius began after a moment, but if I ever find myself amongst royalty again, I'll make sure to give a good word for you. Thank you, Savlius, Elsabeth replied, breaking the embrace. Should we meet again, I hope we can start over. Savlius, now off the high of his emotion, scanned her face and eyes intensely, fearing he fell for a trap. After several moments of feverish investigation, he saw none of the telltale signs she was engaging in intrigue. Slowly relaxing, he smiled and nodded. I hope so too. I wish to know the true Elsabeth, the Queen of Swabia. Chapter 20. Jacques had just set down the surprise delivery of documents when Artir, as before, barged into his office. When Jacques looked upon him, he instantly spotted the fires of determination in his lord's eyes. Jacques, are those? Artir asked, trailing off as he pointed at the documents. Yes, courtesy of the Shadowrunners. Jacques nodded. I've already dispatched my best men to find him. If he's anywhere within our kingdom, you'll have him within a day, at most. Good. Artir nodded back and then took position opposite of the spymaster at the desk. But I fear he may have become less significant now. Jacques, I have an extremely large request of you, one that requires utmost finesse and diligence. Jacques tensed up but maintained his neutral expression. I'm at your disposal, my lord. What I am about to say cannot leave this room, Artir said firmly before leaning over. After Jacques gave a confirming nod, Artir lowered his voice. I have spoken with the Order. I have learned their Grand Master is dreaming. This is the one that broke Jacques' mask. As soon as he registered what he heard, he shot to his feet, barely keeping his voice. Have you gone mad, sire? Do you not realize the implications, the danger that will arise solely by the fact that you may not know the complete picture? Artir hesitated for a moment before he looked into Jacques' eyes, the fire burning even brighter. One of their own has made it clear that the Order may not have our best interests in their mind. There is a threat of war against Swabia, Jacques, and the Order does not feel any urgency in unraveling the mystery. War, you say? Jacques questioned, still in a fit. And how do you know how it'll happen? Athel, are you sure it even will happen? Arthur looked behind him before answering. I know it will. The war involves us against the Redrax. Their old empire, many generations ago, is returning. Jacques slowly inhaled as he processed that information. He then looked square at Arthur. Do the others know? The Commune? The Confederacy? All of them? The king shook his head. No, at least not yet. I want to see if I can prevent it from happening before I begin calling for aid. Good, because they won't be needed, Jacques said in a matter-of-fact tone, still looking at Arthur intently. If we strike now, we'll prevent the war from happening. We just need to know who. Arthur gave a look of shock at his spymaster. Jacques, you too believe in the ML Gospels? It's not a matter of belief, but fact, he answered, tone indicating his conviction. The Drax are a mistake. We ourselves can trace our lineage to the Promel over the countless generations. But the Drax? An accident. Any semblance of civilization on their part is an offensive mockery to us and our ancestor race. Arthur continued his expression of shock for a moment longer, before it gave way to his stoic persona. Well, now I know, but it doesn't matter, Jacques. As your king, I command you to aid me in my effort to strengthen and prepare our kingdom for possible war. Jacques, too, put on a stoic expression, but bowed nonetheless. I hear and obey, my lord. Just tell me what to do. Somewhere north of Danasus, the Redrak corridor lived up to its name. After passing through the Athel's Shield Mountains, it practically became its own living world. No other Drax save for roaming bandits. The only Mels seen are the traders and merchants who either could stomach the presence of vermin or held some sick sympathy for them. In the end, they're just another shambling mass of meat and bone to Neville. One twist of the neck, a length of steel into their hearts, they die all the same. And it is through death that ultimate power reveals itself. Adjusting his robe, fashioned from the skin of many fallen Mel, Neville secured his grip onto his bone staff and then looked behind him for his new servant. Anything? The Redrak, now a skeleton with hanging, putrid innards and shriveled flesh with patchwork fur, shook his head. Each motion let out popping noises. No, master. I haven't heard or seen anybody, so far. Ugh, damn that woman. Neville sighed irritably. Where the hell is she? She's late. After his quick venting of frustration, silence overcame them again. Neville continued to scan discreetly along the horizon. The heavily forested area was cut in half by the wide stone road. It was not a Promel construction, that much Neville knows. Considering the fragments of the Redrak Empire that he remembers, he's taking a guess that it was they who laid down that road. The reanimated Redrak, on the other hand, squatted down and rubbed a few blades of grass. Only a quick but heavy exhale from what was left of his rotted lungs gave any clue to what was in his mind. Ah, you're still here. A woman's voice rang out casually. Both the undead Redrak and the Hamel necromancer looked to the source. It was a Bardrak woman, her silver and gold jewelry softly clinging together as her finest Swabian robe flowed somewhat around her lower body. It's about time, Isabella, Neville said as he crossed his arms. We've been waiting here for days. One more, and we'd have left without you. No big loss, Isabella shrugged, letting out a bit of a grin. I've taught you enough. You're a big boy now. I'm sure you can handle yourself. Neville scowled at her for a few moments and then let out a sigh. So how'd it go then? Did you, resurrect a Promel? Isabella stopped and went quiet for several moments. She then slowly turned towards the Hamel, her face blank. No, but I'm getting closer. How so? Neville asked with a shrug. I placed a Promel soul within a Redrak body, Isabella explained. More importantly, the resurrection ritual did not bind him to my will. The Promel is as independent as you and I. Neville did a double take, finishing with a glare at Isabella. So basically you did resurrect a Promel, just in a different way. Wait, where is he? I let him go. Isabella said simply with a shrug. The Hamel did another double take, but this time let loose his outrage. "Have you gone mad, woman? Why?" "He wasn't Jesse," Isabella answered, her voice having subtle hints of restraint. Novello's face tightly clenched in barely controlled anger, soon pinching the bridge of his nose. "That's it? That's your reason? Do you have any idea what you just wasted? Think, a Prommel, teaching us forgotten knowledge. It may not be magic, but it is absolutely clear they're way more advanced than we are. Weapons, machinery. Then help me find Jesse," Isabella answered with a scowl of her own. "He's the only thing that matters to me. Help me find and bring him back, and I'll teach you how to perform the resurrection ritual once it's perfected." Neville, giving in, sighed and then stared at her. "Fine. One thing first. The Redrak body that you put the soul in, what's the condition of the body?" "Perfectly alive," Isabella responded, leaning against a tree. "Warm, beating, everything to be considered alive." Neville moved to speak, but stopped himself. Finger on his chin, he began thinking through a thought that occurred to him. With a growing smile and a nod, he then looked back to Isabella. "Okay, and the body itself. I'm guessing all those disappearances and murders I've been hearing about are your doing?" "Yes." She nodded casually. "As for creating the living body itself, I first harvested every major organ of the Redrak body. Then I filled up a large jar of male Redrak blood. I'm yet to determine a reason, but I've discovered that if you mix male and female blood, you'll get an odd combination. Meaning, if you want a male or female Redrak, you must harvest blood appropriately. And the Prommel soul," Neville continued, noting that bit of information. "That took effort." She sighed, most definitely recollecting a tiresome event. "That honestly took the longest out of the entire ordeal. My current thinking? The vast majority of the Prommel race were wiped out, body and soul, from whatever destroyed their civilization. A few of them were transported to the ether, where they must contend with its, well, denizens. And obviously by your existence, another small group survived outright, with enough number to repopulate the world." "I see." Neville nodded in thought, scratching his chin absent-mindedly. As he did, Isabella leaned some and gestured towards the undead Redrak. "How long are you keeping him?" "Huh?" Neville blurted before looking back to the Redrak, then to Isabella. "Oh, him. I like him honestly. Didn't think much when I whacked him off of that weird Redrak carriage. Glider, I think it's called. But so far, glad I made the effort." "I'm sure you are," the Redrak muttered, now staring at a few bushes. Neville gave a scoff as he shrugged. "Has a mouth on him, but it's growing on me." "Well, he's your servant," Isabella shrugged. "Now then, let's get going. On the way here, I felt a strong current in the arcane winds. Right now, it feels like it's in the direction of the Athel's Shield Mountains, but only one way to find out for sure." "A strong current?" Neville asked, promptly following behind her with the zombie staying close. "That would be handy. There's a few spells I've been meaning to practice. Kriegsberg, Eastern Swabia. Alfric, you're needed in the throne room," Ginor said as he walked through the doors. "What? Why?" he asked, looking up from a stack of documents on his desk. "We have, well, someone claiming to be an emissary." Ginor shrugged as he peeked behind him. "One look, though, and I'm sure it's obvious that there's some merit to that." "Well, okay, let's go then," Alfric said hesitantly, not sure what to think. Once the Hamel and Budrak are outside the door to Alfric's chambers, they strode their way towards the throne room. After entering and climbing up onto the platform that held his throne, Alfric started to see what the issue was. There was a group of 4 presented to him: a Hamel, 2 Wudraks, and some creature he thinks is a Sadrak. What caught his attention was the attire of the Hamel. While the others are similar in design, something about the pattern and choice on the Hamel's armor indicated a higher rank. And his eyes were strange, very unlike the Swabian Hamels. Could he? "Welcome to Kriegsberg, a humble city within King Artyr's domain of Swabia." Alfric introduced himself after seating himself. "I am Unter Kaiser Alfric Hohenzollern III, and I speak on behalf of Swabia's Eastern Holdings. May I know your name, good sir? The Far Eastern Hamel bowed after approaching him. Right from the start, there was an accent to his words. I greet you, honored ruler. My name is Bayanaga Nengri. I have been chosen by the legendary, revered Khan of my empire, Genghis Khan, to speak for him. Is he the ruler of this celestial empire I hear sometimes? Alfric asked, unsure if it carried offense, yet too curious to let it go. No, your highness. Bayanaga Nengri shook his head, the end of the feathered plume from his helmet swaying some. He is the Khan, emperor of the new Mongolian empire. And what's more, he is a Prommel, the last of the great people to have walked this earth before us. That caused Alfric to straighten his posture, tense even. Excuse me, did you say that Genghis is a Prommel? I have indeed, Bayanaga Nengri nodded. He weeps at the obscurity of his people and wishes to bring them back to glory and greatness with all of us, man and gifted man, to share alike. Gifted man? Alfric inquired. They are, what was that word? Bayanaga Nengri looked aside as he tried to recall what he heard, snapping back to Alfric. Ah, Dracs, yes, Mel and Drac alike. Alfric leaned back into his throne as he thought over the claim. While he won't fully believe it, not at this moment, he does recognize that such a matter is beyond his status. Forgive me. Honored representative, what brings you to such distance? Merely to spread the word of your Khan? Bayanaga Nengri shook his head. No, wise lord. I am here because our Khan is offering his hand in benevolent guidance. If you pledge your loyalty to him, he will promise you protection and a share of anything Prommel he finds or recreates. Like a switch, Alfric immediately changed his tune. He may not be in the politics game long compared to his father. Rest in peace. But he's no fool either. Something is telling him it was a ruse, a front, but he can't speak for all of Swabia. He's just an Unterkaiser, not the king. Honorable speaker, it is not my authority to give an answer to such a request, Alfric said. Speak to my lord, Arter. You'll find him further west, in the great city of Moussaillon. He's the one you should bring that offer to. I thank you for your kindness, Unterkaiser. Bayanaga Nengri smiled with another bow. But I assure you, I have the right man. And just like that, it was sealed for Alfric. Every possible warning sign within his mind was going off. In that case, my answer is a firm no. Artir is the rightful ruler of these lands, and he is my lord. If you think it's that easy to make me change banner, then you have offended me deeply. Bayanaga Nengri straightened his posture and let out an audible sigh, no doubt a sign of his disappointment. You sounded very similar to our smaller cousin race, the Demel. Yes, the Damel. Still, I hear you and I shall respect your decision. Are we allowed to leave? Yes, Alfric responded with a nod. And if you need guidance, my companion Genor will help you. Bayanaga Nengri noticed the Vudrak step forward, his ears somewhat flat and arms crossed, staring him down. Shaking his head, the Mongolian responded, No, but once again, I thank you for your kindness. We will not cause trouble as we leave. With one final deep bow, Bayanaga Nengri and his group made their departure from Alfric's throne room. As soon as they were out of sight, with a few more moments just in case, the Unterkaiser shot out of his throne and then looked at his Vudrak best friend. We need to warn Arter, Alfric said simply. We don't know if it's just me or he has already tried to tempt the other lords away from Swabia. Not only that, but the timing couldn't be any worse. Genor sighed as he nodded. Artir is beginning to change the higher laws. The vast majority of the Western Highborn will be furious. If that Hamel catches wind of this situation, Athel's mercy, you're right, Alfric muttered, the realization slamming into him, before looking at the Wudrak with a slight confused expression. But the man said that all who follow this Khan will share the rewards with the Drakfolk. I don't think... That's the problem, Alfric, Genor said darkly, softly gripping the Unterkaiser's shoulder. How do we know that what that Hamel told us was the truth? Is this Khan truly going to forge an empire where Mel and Drac are equal? Or did he tailor his words to try and make you more likely to believe him? Schwassa, Alfric muttered through clenched teeth. You're right. We don't know anything about that emissary or the Khan he speaks for. The fact that his ultimate request was for me to betray Ardor, that's a sign of nefarious motives. We must assume the worst. I don't know if I have anybody that can get word to him fast enough to make a difference, Genor said with a shrug and worried look. Alfric glanced to him and smirked. I do. Find a winter flower. Fast. Parnax village. Still quiet, sir. A legionnaire reported to Scarface. Nobody has found any sign of unusual activity, within and without the village. Good. Scarface nodded with a sigh, looking around for a moment. We're at a point where it's safe to call the village secured. Start moving some of the men towards the reconstruction effort. I'll start planning out our return to Iron Peaks. With a salute, the legionnaire then jogged away. Taking in a breath, Scarface surveyed the fields and surrounding patch of woodlands before making his way back over to the camp. Passing through the somewhat busy site, seeing the various legionnaires performing their duties, chatting with each other, or just general daily life outside of combat, he returned back to his command tent. Once he entered, he saw Splinter and Derek sitting next to each other, the crossbow in each other's grasp. So then, pull this back, Splinter muttered, watching as the bowstring was pulled back by the lever. Yeah, keep pulling until this catch here grabs the string, Derek said, pointing out the locking nut. After some more force, the string was caught by the lock, to which Derek then continued, Okay, there. Now just take the lever off, put a bolt here, and boom, you got yourself a weapon. What do you think? Scarface asked the black fur redrak with a slight grin. Think Albert will love it? Splinter let out a chortling laugh as he nodded. Absolutely, especially when he hears Derek made it without his or the collegate's help. Not only that, but I am pretty sure he's going to shove every single repeater bow design he came up with into Derek's face. Collegate? Derek asked with a little confusion. You mean, like, scientists? People who studied how and why stuff works? Yeah. Splinter nodded, carefully setting the crossbow down beside his feet. Is that what the Prommel called them? Scientists? Yep, for science, Derek nodded back. I mean, I wasn't studying to be one. Actually wanted to be an engineer, but, well, things got a bit overwhelming. And how are engineers different? Scarface questioned with a shrug. Where scientists figure out why things work the way they do, Derek began, engineers take what they learned and figure out how to make people's lives better with them. Albert is going to be so happy when he hears that. Scarface chuckled a bit. He always did like making things better than finding answers to the world's secrets. Speaking of making things, Splinter. Derek turned his attention to the Master Assassin. What the hell happened to him? All I know so far is that Albert experimented with some dark magic or something and practically blew up his tower. What happened? Splinter went quiet and still. Derek noticed that the scent he believed was happiness immediately evaporated, yet nothing replaced it. Scarface, too, dropped into solemn silence. Albert took it the hardest out of all of us when, well, thinking you died, Splinter began, his voice careful and calm. He was hysterical. If he wasn't, trying to take his life, he spent entire nights crying himself to sleep, and only for a couple hours before waking from night terrors. Derek, his throat tight, could only nod in acknowledgement. After a quick inhale, Splinter continued. Honestly, those first few weeks were the absolute worst out of the entire 1200 years. It wasn't until we discovered the Empire that we at least began making attempts at trying to get ourselves out of the emotional void we were in. Wait, 1200? Derek asked, pushing through his emotionally clogged throat. Not just 1,000? Roughly, Scarface answered with a sigh. When we lost the Empire, well, let's just say we didn't exactly care what day it was for a long time. My guess, more like 1,500. I know that expanding the borders took a while. Albert will most likely have a better answer, Splinter said. He's the one who tried to collect and preserve as many records as he could. People here still use the Imperial calendar. Just need to find one event either of us solidly remembers and we'll know the exact number. All right, Derek acknowledged with a nod. You were saying? Splinter didn't seem particularly eager to continue, yet he did. Even then, I still worry that Albert never truly moved on. His work at the academy and afterwards was more a distraction. How do you think he'll react when he sees me? Derek asked, becoming fearful. Honestly, I have no idea. Splinter sighed. It's equally likely that he'll be incomprehensibly elated to see you again, especially when he gets your scent. Or he may just outright deny you. I really don't know. Well, fuck. Derek sighed heavily, actually becoming conflicted now. Not because he no longer wants to see Albert again, but because he's deathly afraid if Albert will completely deny his new existence. And considering that he's no longer a human, but a redrak now, it's more likely than not that that will indeed happen. Or maybe he's just not giving Albert a chance. So, how long until we hear back from your agents? Scarface inquired after scratching at the back of his neck. About the witch? If they're anywhere within the Empire, soon, Splinter answered confidently, sitting down again by Derek. In that case, I'll have a look through my equipment. Scarface nodded. That way, I'll be ready at a moment's notice. And Vala? Derek spoke up. Any way to know what happened to him? Like, if it was the witch that killed him, or something else? The runners will know, Splinter encouraged with a smile. If they believe the witch didn't do anything, they'll know what to do. Now tell me why you think this crossbow of yours is useless, yeah? A few hours later, Mosao. I wonder what's so urgent that the king has requested our presence immediately, a nobleman asked aloud within a circle of other highborn. Could it be related to the charges announced against Louis? A noblewoman made a guess. Is Arter launching a grand investigation? Figure out if it was just him or there's a conspiracy? There's a conspiracy, all right, the first nobleman said with a sneer. A good friend of mine told me that Artyr sent out a high-priority letter to that Eastern Lord, Alfricht, all before coming back from the fortress chapel of St. Athel. Do you think the order planted something in Artyr's mind? The noblewoman questioned with slight shock. Why was Arter even over there? Who even pays attention to some monks who's never seen the light of day? I think I have a guess, a younger nobleman spoke up, face all but serious. A little birdie told me that Elsabeth had a private chat with that redrak attendant of hers, saw the queen embrace that vermin too, just earlier today, right after Arter left the royal chambers. Wait, you don't think? The nobleman said with growing surprise on his face. No, of course not, the noblewoman laughed once she caught on to his thoughts. The king and queen may be such bores with the animals, but they would never fall to such vile depravity. Attention for the royal king, one of the royal guardsmen shouted above the hushed conversations. Soon and rapidly the grand hall grew silent. The footsteps, slowly getting louder, signaled the arrival of Artyr. With a quick glance over the crowd of nobility, Artyr fully faced them and prepared his speaking voice. Sons and daughters of Athel, hear me, Artyr began. I greatly appreciate you accepting such a last-minute request of me. I have brought you all here because within the past 2 days, I have discovered something disturbing. Artyr paused for a moment, watching as growing dread appeared on their faces. Taking in a breath, he resumed his speech. For some time, I had my suspicions, but it is only now that I have discovered the name of who is working to fragment our great kingdom. The name you know already, Louis de Samu, is but one piece of this puzzle. Citizens, peasant and highborn alike, this I have discovered. The ancient redrak empire of old is returning. A quick but sharp gasp of shock crashed through the crowd. They immediately began to whisper to each other, unable to hold back their need to share their thoughts. Artyr raised his hand, causing the fevered conversations to die down again. As much as I wish this isn't the case, their return cannot be stopped, not without full force of arms, Artyr said firmly. I do not know the name or location of the creature moving to revive the Empire. We must assume it is too late, and that it is only a matter of time before we witness the rebirth proper. As such, the only choice we have is to prepare. I am confident that they will seek to engage and embolden the Drakfolk many of you have employed as servants, perhaps even instruct and outfit them for war. To deny them such a strategic move, and even better, limit their strength, I issue this following decree. From this day forward, any Drac who has been a resident of this kingdom longer than 1 year shall be considered a full citizen of the kingdom, entitled to the rights and protections as such. Immediately, almost within a heartbeat, the Highborn erupted into full-scale outrage. Ardor expected a pushback, but he vastly underestimated the scale of it. Did he misunderstand just how deep-rooted the Highborn's perceptions are? Their views on the natural hierarchy of the world? "Sounds like you're bending the knee already, King," an elderly noble shouted through enraged teeth. "Summon the knights! Call upon the levy! We have a right to servants!" "The people of Swabia will never bow down to disgusting and soulless creatures," a woman joined in. "Put them to the sword, every last one of them." "If our servants are the issue, then just chop them," a young man declared. "We'd rather suffer inconvenience than to submit to the vermin." "Everyone, please," Ardor shouted back, hands raised as he tried to calm the crowd somewhat. "You're not understanding. The Empire will try to position itself as a haven for Dracfolk, just as they had before. By following this decree, we'll force the Empire to meet us in honorable combat, of which we will easily force them back into submission." "Why wait then?" the older nobleman demanded. "Give us the word. We'll summon our levies and march on the vermin right now. Put them down before they rise up." "That will only enrage them," Ardor shot back. "We'll be giving them a symbol to rally around, which will only serve as a strength. We must play the politics game, make their citizens lose faith in the new empire." "You're a coward," the young man pointed furiously at Ardor. "I'm not waiting around on you. I'm telling my subjects war has come. Anyone else who won't stand by, let's go." "Don't you dare," Ardor warned, his stoic expression cracking into indignant rage. "And by law, I can have you carried away and drawn for such an insult." "Then draw us all," an aged noblewoman challenged. "We'd rather die than be humiliated by freaks of nature." Artyr was taken aback by their sudden determination, the shock making him watch a sizable crowd of the Highborn leave the grand hall. All of them no doubt marching to, at first, the silent drum of war. And when they arrive at their holdings and send out word to bring in the levies, the world will hear that drum. And it was here that Artyr was floored by overwhelming mythical horror. He had deeply underestimated the strength of their convictions. How sure and confident they are that to be a Mel is to possess an unspoken natural dominance, superiority over the Drac. And for the first time since taking the throne, Artyr wavered under the possible realization that he had just made the greatest mistake of his life. Chapter 21. After the meeting with that Mongolian emissary, Bayanaga Nengri, Alfric's mind was occupied by what-ifs, constantly trying to predict various routes and events that could either be happening currently or might happen. Is the Far East Hamel actively trying to tempt other lords into sedition? Did he only go for the Unterkaiser for some special reason? Maybe the actual goal was to try and get a sense of the political environment of Swabia? Alfric just doesn't know right now, and that fact is what's keeping him on edge. Perhaps the one idea that's constantly intruding his thoughts is that, purely by the fact that Bayanaga Nengri is going around and trying to gain vassals diplomatically, must be a sign that this Genghis Khan is coming, marching towards Swabia, or the whole continent of Tyre as they speak. What army or armies does the Khan command? What are they capable of? And how far are they willing to go for victory? "Alfric," Genor spoke as he entered the ducal chamber, somewhat startling the Unterkaiser out of his thoughts. "Oh, yes," he replied. It was dark out. Was it night already? How long had he been playing out various scenarios in his head? Genor was silent, and one look at his face, Alfric's heart sank. He was livid. Just as Alfric was about to say something, Genor finally broke his silence. "We were lied to. The Westerners are preparing for war." Alfric's chest exploded, surging with rage and fear. "Explain. Klaus just received an emergency message from his delegate to the West." Genor began, his hands trembling with seething, violent anger. "The Redrax in the corridor are about to revive their empire. That, alongside Artyr's proclamation that Dracs are full Swabian citizens, the Western nobility has launched a full-scale revolt and are mobilizing their levies and knights." Alfric shot to his feet, nearly slamming his chair to the ground. "How many?" "The vast majority," he answered simply through bared teeth. "I haven't heard a single highborn reject this action, and I don't expect any." Feeling the world melt away from him, Alfric leaned against the wall as he struggled to recompose himself. Is there truly no way? Are he and the rest of the Teutons the only Hamel who aren't violently opposed to the Dracs? As Alfric began to return to some sense of composure, so too was Dark Clarity. He is now all but convinced. This alone is proof enough of how far gone the Western Highborn are. The hopelessness of reason. Any word of the other Mel nations? The Commune and Confederacy? Others? Alfric asked, his voice calm and controlled now. "Klaus thinks they're still unaware," Gnor responded, crossing his arms. "But with this, it won't be long at all." "Then time is of the essence," Alfric said, simply. He looked toward the window where the silver plate containing a single winter flower stood. It was smoldering, the wisps of smoke flickering upward until they dissipated. He was sure he lit it before he took to preparing and anticipating the Khan's arrival. "Where is that?" "Am I interrupting something?" A voice spoke out. When Gnor and Alfric looked to the source, there he was, the Shadow Runner. "On the contrary," Alfric replied, though he allowed his face to show annoyance. "You're late, already a bad start. My only excuse is that I was on a big job." The agent sighed with a shrug, stepping out of the darkest corner of the room and into some light. There, Alfric saw he definitely fit the part. Leather armor with a cape and hood, all colored to allow hiding in the shadows. "I'm here, though. I hope whatever you needed isn't time-sensitive. I summoned you because I don't require a service. I came to deliver a warning." Alfric began, approaching the Shadowrunner. "Two, actually, but one involves your people, the Ridrax." "Okay, I'm listening," the agent said cautiously. "I have just received word of this from my chancellor," Alfric stated, returning to his seat. "The Swebian lords in the west are summoning their levies and knights. They have just heard that the Ridrax are about to reunite and reform their old empire. The Westerners aim to stop that before it happens." The agent took in a visible, audible, shocked breath. "How many?" "As far as we know, all of them." Alfric sighed, resting his chin onto his clasped hands. "We must consider the Highborn to have begun revolting against him. I give you my word, however, I and any lord under my vassalage will not take part in this." The agent was visibly distressed by this, evident by the shaky breathing and movement. After a moment, he returned his attention back to the Unterkaiser. "And the second warning?" "This one, do as you will with it," Alfric said dismissively. "An emissary from the Far East, claiming to represent the new Mongolian Empire, is trying to tempt various lords into serving this ruler named Genghis Khan. I have a feeling that we're about to meet this empire proper, however, in the days to come shortly." The Shadowrunner nodded. "Understood. And you said you desire nothing from us?" Alfric was just about to say no when a realization hit him. "Maybe. Is it possible that I could have the assistance of the Shadowrunners?" Alfric took his shot, slowly standing to his feet. "I've given up on believing the Westerners can be reasoned with. Teutons everywhere are chafing under their archaic culture. Can you lend us your aid in our coming bid for independence?" The Shadowrunner thought this over, eyes now staring at the floor, finger tapping his arm. After some tense moments, the agent looked at Alfric in the eyes. "Normally, we have a policy of maintaining neutrality whenever possible. But if the Swebian West are indeed moving to commit war against the Ridrak people, this is a rare exception where we just cannot be neutral. I'll deliver the news to my brethren. Stay vigilant. You'll hear from us again." With a nod from Alfric, the Shadowrunner moved to the window where the winter flower was and leaped out. Shocked, Gnor ran over. Yet he found nothing. The Shadowrunner was already out of sight, the walls of the keep tall and perfectly flat. "Gnor, where's Klaus? Is he still in his office?" Alfric asked. "When I left him, yes," the Budrak nodded, walking away from the window. "Let's go." The Unterkaiser gestured as he already made his way to the door. "We must summon the counts immediately. Maceion, Western Swabia. The entire world just collapsed, and it was all his fault. Artur was just a husk of what he was earlier in the day, slumped in his throne, having stared at the opulent floor, with the long length of beautifully embroidered carpety stretching out from his feet. If it was one or two highborn, he knew how to deal with them. But the entirety of the nobility? Every single one? What can he do against that number? What good is his authority if nobody respects or even acknowledges it? Did he fall victim to his own desperation? Or his faith in his countrymen? Had he blinded himself so much to their vehement arrogance towards the Dracs, emulating the Imel? Or perhaps IT was the growing, crushing realization that all along it was actually he who would cause Swabia to fracture, that it would not be the Redrax performing intrigue upon his court or some other outside force, but instead his own efforts to prevent it. It was at this moment that he did gain full realization. The sacred law, the highest, strictest law of all within the order. No tribune of any rank or position shall share any knowledge or discussion with the outside world without explicit approval from the Grand Master. At this moment, Artur finally understood. Just because you have seen what might happen does not mean you know how it will happen. And here Artur understood that his fear of a devastating war between Swabia and the new Redrac Empire will occur not because of Redrac spying or provocation or any other. No, it will occur all because Artur tried to stop it. And now he doesn't know what to do. The Highborn are dead set on stopping the Redracs, determined to cease any efforts at perceived offense or mockery of that they hold dear. Utterly disgusted and faithless in their cowardly king, believing that he had bent the knee to a possible threat without even trying to tackle it. "A horse!" Artur was startled by a voice within the throne room. "My kingdom for a horse!" Towards his right was a man, a towering giant, and by the armor he wore he was a knight. Yet the armor itself seemed sinister. It was black, almost like the midnight sky. Dark and malevolent spikes accentuated that armor, with a black, tattered tabard over the cuirass and extending downward to his knees. But there was one sight on him that stole Artur's attention. On his helmet, with two large curled spikes extending from each side, was an unmistakable eye, orange and bright, cutting through the dark like a torch at night. "Who are you?" Artur demanded, now having something to keep his dark thoughts at bay. "And what do you mean?" "Long ago there was a lord of this land." The Dark Knight began, his voice smooth and calm, yet sinister underneath. "He went to battle, but during that battle his faithful horse fell. He wandered the field for hours, desperate to find his trusted steed. And when he found the corpse of that who carried him faithfully in battle, it was there that he shouted that phrase. And he then went on to slaughter hundreds of men." "You mean an equus?" Artur questioned, a sense of unease growing. "Yes," the knight responded, his eye unblinking. "I say that because at this moment, that which you took for granted has now become the only thing of value in this world. Swabian peace, unity. So in this case, it'll become my kingdom for peace." "Yes?" "Huh? Yes," Artur sighed, giving in to his despair. "It is not your fault, your lordship," the knight assured, beginning to make his way towards Artur, the heavy clanking and thudding implying the weight of his armor. "Everything you have done was for a better future for your subjects. Unity and peace. Prosperity. The Redracs are returning, and you felt as though they would become hostile towards your land and people. You did what any good lord would do. You tried to protect that which you held dear. And I have failed miserably," Artur said firmly, the act of saying it forcing emotion out of him. "No, you did not," the knight countered, now in front of the sulking king, kneeling down. "You were misled. Explain." Artur asked, not having thought of such possibility. "The sacred law," the knight said. "Any and all members of the order shall not divulge thoughts or words spoken of within the chapel to anyone outside under punishment of death, enacted after the terrible aftermath of the Sundering 1,000 years ago. Or rather, that was the original reason. How did you— Nah, never mind." Artur stopped himself, remembering that news of his sudden visit to the order would no doubt be public knowledge by now. Continue. Think about it, Your Majesty. The knight resumed, tapping his helmet with a claw-like finger. They possess the ability to ascertain future events, and the Order has been around since Athel himself. For as long as they have existed, is it truly outside the realm of possibility that they have learned how to determine the sequence of events that will result in their predictions? Are you truly saying that they manipulated me? Arthur asked incredulously, starting to sit up in his throne. That they wanted this war between Swabia and the new empire. Hostility between Mel and Drakkind are inevitable, as I'm sure you've realized. The knight nodded. Thanks to the Amel, all but the Eastern Swabians are now utterly convinced of their racial superiority and view any attempts at civilization as an offensive insult to them and their primal ancestors. Perhaps it's not the war itself they desired. More so, a means of punishment. Arthur muttered, teetering between belief and disbelief. As I said, think. The knight tapped his helmet once more. The Eastern Hamel have long been considered an embarrassment for you across the land. They have asked you time and again to bring them to heel, yet nothing has happened. And after reports of Wamel caravans being raided, is it possible that they have had enough? And is it truly such an outlandish idea that perhaps there are enough influential tribunes in the Order to decide they too have had enough? Within moments, Arthur found life once more. With a scowled face, he shot to his feet and glared directly into the burning eye of the knight. Enough. That one tribune, blessed his heart may be, has made a terrible mistake breaking the sacred law he did. The Order are different men than you and I. I find it absolutely impossible that they have intentionally manipulated events for their own gain, be it political or otherwise. Now start explaining yourself. Who are you? Why are you in my throne room? The knight let out a deep sigh, most certainly one of disappointment. I am the chosen of God, Arthur. I am here to try and help the children of man return to the beautiful paradise of heaven and bask in the eternal protection and love of our Lord. Are you ... FROM the Order? Artyr asked, bewildered and taken completely by surprise. No, I am not, Arthur. The knight shook his head. I have come in the name of the Lord. I had hoped you would play your part in his divine plan, but ... it seems you will require divine intervention. If you're implying what I think you are, that would be a costly mistake, Artyr warned when he began sensing danger. While I will concede that there has been fierce disagreement between me and the highborn here, I am still the rightful king of Swabia. Yes, I am aware. The knight nodded. But fear not, for I am not killing you. Instead, I am releasing who you truly are, what the Lord sees in you, imprisoned within this corrupted flesh. Within a heartbeat, Arthur drew his sword, knowing exactly what he meant. Before he could reach his much-practiced form, within the very time it took for him to blink, the knight drew his own blade and smacked the sword out of Arthur's hand in one smooth motion. The harsh clang sparked genuine terror in his heart, and the subsequent clattering when it reached the floor far to his left further inflamed that fear. The knight's blade was alight with flame, the metal itself white while the tongues of fire flickered and swayed outward. And before he could draw in a dreaded breath, seizing the momentum, the knight plunged his sword into Arthur's neck, one of the few spots uncovered by his armor. He could feel the tip of the blade all the way to his side, the fires of that dreaded sword already cooking him. Every breath was a desperate gurgling of blood that splattered and dribbled from his mouth. When he collapsed to his knee and the blade withdrew from his body, the pain began to melt away. Cold washed over his body. Then in the middle of the grand hall, the air itself tore apart, becoming a gateway to somewhere else. Wider and wider it became, as if Arthur's world was being consumed and swallowed. In the place of his throne room was something entirely foreign. A land awash in purple, the sky filled with violet clouds. And the denizens of this place seemed Hamel. While not possessing armor, their skin was black as charcoal, and their faces were Hamel in shape but not detail. Eyes that seemed more like glowing, jagged stones, and mouths without lips but a vast array of sharp, dagger-like teeth. And when they saw him, they put on what seemed like a smile and stretched out their arms. Were they welcoming him? Like a great arm, Arthur felt himself yanked forward, now fully within this alien world. Louis? Louis? Aiden said, firmly shaking the guardsman by the shoulders. He found his friend slumped against the wall by the entrance to the throne room. He needs to know if Louis is dead or no. A slight groan gave the answer. Louis pressed his palm against his head as he looked around in a daze, where he then saw Aden. What happened? Why are you... Louis, what happened? Aden demanded, helping him up. I found you on the floor. I thought you were dead. I was on guard. Louis began rubbing his head. He then froze before staring wide-eyed at Aden. There was a knight, out of nowhere. He was just walking towards the door. I was moving to stop him, and then he just pointed at me. Next thing I knew, you're here. The king, Aden shouted. Immediately, he shoved Louis aside and barged through the door that connected the throne room to the royal section. When he looked upon the throne, his throat seized up and he felt as though he was going to vomit. Arthur lay dead on his throne, blood drenching his side and pooling on the seat. His face was a pure horror, a face that will haunt Aden forever. Athel, preserve us. Louis gave a hushed shout when he arrived. Sound the alarm! The king has been murdered! Louis shrieked. Parnax's village. For the first time in 1,000 years, Splinter was happy. Here he was, in bed with Derek in his arms. He was surprised at Derek's willingness for the safe embrace. The Melfolk and even other Dracs are off-put, if understandably, by this highly intimate interaction. He was worried Derek too would view it as a strictly sexual act. But after Derek told him about his escapade with the local Tybon, he did feel relief on some level. As much as he tried to accept it, Splinter still hoped that Derek was alive this entire time. And during those brief periods where he surrendered to his inner pain, he always wondered how it would feel when Derek returned, what their lives would become, what kind of adventures or lack thereof they would have. This moment right here was far beyond anything he imagined. Derek's mere presence was enough to make him forget about the troubles and evils of this world. He's not sure if all of this was a result of trained devotion growing up as his pet back in the primal age, when he was nothing more than an instinct-driven animal. Perhaps he may never know. He was forced out of his thoughts. A Shadowrunner scent was in the air. As evident as it was that they tried to mask it, it's still there. Splinter won't judge. It was a very good effort. Only other agents and he can pick up on it. And given the rate at which it's growing stronger, the agent will speak in 3, 2. My lord, the Shadowrunner said softly, expertly entering the tent without making any noise whatsoever. Forgive my rudeness, but I've received news you must hear. I'm listening, go, Splinter replied, periodically checking if Derek woke up. The Western Highborn of Swebia are marching to war against the Redrak people. The agent explained in a rush, noticeably distressed. They've learned that our empire is coming back and mean to crush it before it takes its first breath. Splinter felt his chest tighten. This isn't good. Not at all. The Swebians are renowned for their magically enhanced knights and unstoppable cavalry. If they get across the Devil's Forces, Spine Mountains, they can cause widespread devastation across the land before a suitable response from Iron Peaks will arrive. Just as he was about to respond, he smelled a strong surge in fear. He knew who it was from. Thank you. Is there anything else? Splinter said, keeping his stoic image. Just one more, purely a Swebian concern. The agent nodded. There is a Hamel from the Far East claiming to represent the new Mongolian Empire, requesting Swebian dukes and counts to swear fealty to Genghis Khan. This time Derek shut up. What did you just say? The agent was caught off guard, though he recovered quickly. There's a Hamel from the Far East, claiming to represent a country known as the New Mongolian Empire. He's demanding the lords of Swebia to swear allegiance to this ruler, Genghis Khan. Derek fell silent, his eyes drifting towards empty space. Splinter knew what this meant. With a quick gesture, he dismissed the agent, who graciously bowed and left as silently as he entered. Derek, what is it? Splinter asked. It's fuck everything, man, Derek said after a few moments. These Swabians, they're coming for us, right? Not the Redrax, you, me, us? Splinter drew in a breath before he answered. No, it's anyone that's Redrak. They'll move to cause as much damage as they can, property, and lives. Because they think we're forming a country or something? Why? Derek demanded, flopping onto his back. It's... Splinter trailed off with a sigh. There's a very long, bloody history between Mel and Drak. The Mel folk despise our existence. They think we're a mistake. If they won't keep us in submission, they'll exterminate us. But why do they think we're forming a country? Derek continued, throwing his hands up. Splinter sighed once more. Deep in Swabia, there's a monastic order, the Order of St. Athel. Swabian knights protecting and serving a member of Athel's bloodline. He possesses the ability to discern the future, in time. And right now it's appearing that the Redrak Empire will return. Okay, great. So it sounds like somebody is going to become this emperor that Yearn wanted. Yeah, Derek said with a shrug, sitting up. Any idea or guesses as to who it is? Or whether it'll happen before the Swabians come? Splinter shook a little, finding difficulty in answering the question. Still, he answered, the only thing we know for sure is that the Empire's rebirth will be heralded by 4 Redraks. And, well, I know who those 4 are. Okay, who are they? Derek questioned. Splinter stayed silent, staring at Derek. After some time, Derek caught on, his fear turning into rage. Really? Are you fucking butt-fucking me here? Really? Derek, Splinter muttered, at a loss for words. Why fucking me? Derek shouted, already out of the bed and starting to pace. Why? What is it about me that everybody is so fucking obsessed about? Why does everybody think I have what it takes to be the goddamn emperor? It may not be completely about you, Splinter said anxiously. It could purely be because of us. Me, Scarface, and Albert. Even after all these years, we still love you. You hold incredible influence over us, over me. I'm trusting that you'll do right. But even then, I don't know if I can say no to you. Derek stopped in his tracks, taken by surprise at that statement. He was shocked that Splinter displayed such self-awareness. He also felt completely uplifted in spirits that Splinter had such feelings towards him. An entire swirl of emotions that in the end didn't help his current situation at all. God, I don't know what to fucking do, man. Derek muttered in defeat, falling back onto the bed. I mean, I got a really good idea what'll happen if I become emperor, and I don't know if I can do it. I never even took charge of fucking school projects. I always just did what the other guy said. It doesn't matter for this one reason, Splinter said, wrapping an arm around Derek in a comforting embrace. You won't do this alone. Scarface and I are here and with you, and soon Albert too. You won't be at a disadvantage. Scarface can command armies and fight personally if needed. I can handle spying and assassination, and Albert can figure out new machines and tools to solve problems. With that said, what's left? Derek remained quiet, giving a shrug as he looked at the black fur. Splinter gave an encouraging smile. A vision. What will it all mean? What's the purpose of it all? Why is Scarface fighting? Why am I getting this bit of knowledge or killing this person? And why is Albert solving this particular problem? What does it all mean or work towards? Everybody was asked this question at some point, and I'm sure you have too, Derek. If you became emperor, what would you do? I don't know, Derek muttered with a shrug. It can be anything, Derek, anything. Splinter continued his smile. Is it making people happy? You see a problem in the world you want fixed? Cock, you can even say you just want to feel like a powerful ruler. Derek moved to say something but stopped himself. A thought had hit him, a familiar one, and as he dwelled on it, with each passing moment, he became more and more determined, confident, emboldened. He turned to Splinter and in a voice of confident authority stated, I want to rebuild human, promo civilization. I know it'll never be the same, but I want to feel like I'm back home again. Splinter's smile turned into a grin. I'm ready and able, my lord. What do you want me to do? Derek was a little off-put by that address, but as he started to accept the things he'll become able to do when he's an actual emperor and not some smith in a nowhere village, he grinned back. First, get Scarface here so we can hear the news. Actually, him and Yearn. Once that's done, we're going full fucking speed ahead to Iron Peaks, was it? Wherever Albert is. Letting out a prideful laugh, Splinter got to his feet and after a bow said, As you command, my lord.